Right, kia ora koutou, welcome back, everyone. I think we are online and ready to go. Welcome back. So before we get into the rest of council business today, we have, under our standing orders, we have provision to have topics of public forum where someone can come and book a time to come and spend 10 minutes on an issue with us. And so we have got, before we get into the rest of our council business, we do have public forum this morning, and Clint Decker has booked to come and speak to us. So welcome, Clint. Come and have a seat. Join us at the table. So public forum is the opportunity for issues to be raised and information shared. Not necessarily things that we can solve at the time, but bringing things to our attention. So welcome, Clint. We've got, including opportunity for questions, probably about 10 minutes before we move on. Okay.
Thank you very much. Koto, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a busy day in front of you. Hopefully I won't take up the full 10 minutes. I'm here because this council has shown at least some determination to attack some of the problems that have been kicked down the road for quite some time. And that gives me a little bit of heart to put yet another complex problem in front of you. Some of you may know I was part of the Tuki Leaders Forum or the subsequent Tuki Task Force looking at theatre in CHB. In that time, devoured kilos of reports, perspectives, data. So, although by no means an expert, a little bit of background information about water and an interest in it. And my message today is simple. We need to have a good, hard look at how we're using our water currently. The HBRC Regional Water Assessment was a great help to actually have a look at what we're using water for now and possibly what we could need in the future. CHB doesn't come out of it particularly well. We use by far the most amount of water per capita, and we get the least economic return per litre of all of the regions in Hawke's. If we earned what Wairoa earned per litre for the water we use, we would have another $953 million in GDP per year. Highest use, lowest return. Not really where we want to be. The regional water assessment looked at three scenarios. Curiously, scenario 3 never made it to the press release or the community consultation document. Scenario 3 showed that with relatively small savings of around 1 to 2% per year, there'd actually be a surplus of water. Scenario 3. Unfortunately, to find scenario 3 in that data, you've got to read the whole report, not the community documents. The Managed Aquifer Recharge Pre-Feasibility Report is another report that I think's invaluable because it looks at the problem with different glasses. Most of the stuff you get from regional council, it's a generalisation, but it tends to be, you know, nothing to see here, we're on top of it, everything's okay. The pre-feasibility report, probably because it was trying to encourage people to spend millions of dollars to fix the problem, actually presents, things clearly. And the graph on the right shows where our aquifer is going. So since 1984, not only is it heading in one direction, but over the years, the amplitude of change of the aquifer, so how every year it goes up and down, but now it goes really down and it doesn't tend to come back up quite so much. So we have a big problem. Last summer, I couldn't help but notice my neighbour, crops of peas, he can't irrigate. There's no more water. Water is fully allocated or over allocated. Luckily, it was a good season. I understand. I've grown peas. I've farmed. You need water in our climate. You need water at the right time for peas. You need water, and then you don't need. It's a manifestation of the unfairness of the faulty water allocation system that has worked here. That there are some who have, and some who have not. And there seems to be a few who have a whole lot. And that's what we need to address. The Google photo there is the corner of Ashcott Road and Burnside Road, my backyard. And it's an interesting spot to see just down Ashcott Road. I think it's probably about 20 hectare with a centre pivot irrigator. And over the years, that has grown onion seeds, carrot seeds, I assume, another vegetable crop that I'd never seen before. Tiny bit of water during the grow season. On the other side of Burnside Road, you have a number of centre pivot irrigators, the biggest of them almost a kilometre long, running full time. Often I've seen them from September until the following June, pouring out masses of water for grass for dairy cows. The contrast is amazing. So, the reason I'm here is I think we need to start having a conversation about how we use water now, and then that can lead into deciding how much and where we need to store it, because water storage is a given. It needs to happen. So I wonder if I could ask you to quiz the Regional Council and get some responses to those three questions there. The first two should be pretty straightforward. The third one, I imagine, will require a little bit of work. Yeah, and communicate that. And let's start talking about it. And thank you very much for your time. Kia ora.
Thank you, Clint. Three very pertinent questions. We've got a couple of minutes if anyone would like to ask a question about what he's presented.
I was just wondering about the Wairoa GDP. What's their use of water that's creating better return? So, like, what do they use water for rather than opposed to what to do?
I'm not an expert, and I don't know the methodology they've used to produce that, but cropping.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yep.
cropping is the thing. It's the GDP.
It's the interesting part is on that water use and GDP. Is the water use directly related to the GDP of the water use, or is it just the overall GDP of the district? Can't remember from that report.
Again, I don't know what's behind the methodology.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty back of the envelope calculation there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Aitken.
I think we did discuss this in a meeting one day about the GDP and the CHP, for example. You take your fruit and that goes into Hastings, which is included in the Hastings GDP. And a lot of that's where a lot of our product produced here moves out of the district to be further processed. And that's what I understand it. But I was interested in your comment, water storage. What is your thoughts about how we store water, where and how?
Well, ideally, you store as much as you need so that you've got it when you need it.
But where and how? Where? On farm or?
On farm, yes, absolutely. Off river, reservoir, yeah. But you've first sort of got to work out where you need the water. I think the previous processes have tended to be, here's the water, now how do we use it? And I think that was in reverse.
I wonder whether, so just in terms, I think some questions are really good. We have got a piece of work around our economic development action plan. We've got, obviously there's a conversation about water security that's important to us all. There's also a conversation about what we do with our economic development action plans as well. which talks about water, it talks about land use diversification, it talks about adding value, but we're in a process we need to relook at that as well. So questions are really pertinent to how we would look at that. I'm sure we'll prompt everyone to go back and have a look at these reports that you've taken those snips out of, which are, I agree, are really great reports, and provide a lot of information. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Enjoy the rest of your day in the sunshine.
Thank you.
We'll sit in a meeting room and look at
That's
that. pieces of
important
paper.
work. Good on you.
Thank you.
I wonder if we just make an action, so that if it would be quite good to be able to, ask Hawke's Regional Council could even ask them to come back for other things, to potentially give us an update on that standard equity charge staff pay and all that sort of thing and what they're doing. I mean, the hard part is we're in a position where we can't take background at the moment because we've lost a little bit of time, with dealing with other things, but I think it's quite an exciting place to be and to be reminded of some of that important work and actually start bringing them back to the table and particularly make sure that we invite you clubs to come along when they do consent and make sure you're.
So we do have some actions of where regional council are going to come to see us.
Yeah.
So I think we can think about the work program and how we do that.
I think maybe also asking Sasha to look into that GDP question of Tim's to find out, of councillor Atkins to find out what the how that GDP, the methodology to find out whether that's the case or.
Thank you. Good thoughts. Thank you. Thanks, Glenn. Oh, sorry, you missed it, Greenville. Right. Council papers, we're page 30. Page 30, which is resolution monitoring, is the first item, which is pretty weighty in terms of the actions of council that sit there at the moment. Mr. Tate, is there anything you'd like to add on where any of those things are up to?
Not just noting many of them have moved to completed and probably those that are still sitting is amber as we work through hopefully new committee structures today, recognising that some of those resolutions may also make their way through to committees as well. So just noting again, as we work through that, you may see for the next meeting more of those transfers.
Thank you, Councillor Aikman.
Central Lines Aquatic Centre, I see it's still sitting there and we were meant to do something on the 30th of June, but now it's been pushed out to 25. It's now been sitting there for a couple of years. And it's concerning that it is sitting on council's unknown and what that may mean to us. Is there any chance of getting this sped up so that council has a bit more certainty around what the risk it is for the council going forward?
Okay, so there's a process that we're working through that needs to come back into actions, but do you want to just talk about
And
that?
just speak very briefly, I met with the chair yesterday, actually, councillor, so good timing and working through a program to bring that back.
So that has been given an extra year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the 12, as it says on there, the 12-month extension
Yeah.
was granted. Good. There's quite a few on here that will, as they can move over into different committee structures. If we get there, for instance, land transport, section 17As and those bits will be very clearly in work programs of committees. So can we have a mover and seconder, please, to note that report? Councillor Moynihan and Councillor Taylor. Anything further to add? All those in favour, please say aye. Oh yes, the late agenda. Let's flick to the late agenda items, which are the ones that have got a bit of decision making attached to them. So if you go to the separate items that were attached. And considering I'm putting this forward under my delegations and legislation, I may as well speak to it. As we've discussed about how we focus our governance and leadership to assist the organisation across our priorities with the structure that I put forward a little while ago to discuss and have spoken to you all about where you would like to play a role, and that is covered across these committee structures. I think it's important to note that I see the core work of council actually comes under the Strategy, Growth and Community Committee and the Finance, Infrastructure and Performance Committee. That's familiar to us. But the addition of a Transport Committee to take some of the very focused heavy lifting on that key area for us in the short term is important, and how we assist the decision making and the direction to continue to move forward in that space. It's important to us, it's important to community, and it's important to the organisation. It's a stated priority for us. So that was the logic behind that. To be honest, in the longer term, I would like to think that we don't have a need for a transport committee, but right now it's an important topic for us to be assisting. It's the terms of reference that I've put forward are very focused really about two things, which is those actions around the improvement in delivery and the movement on the new contracting mechanisms, and also about the recovery programming, moving into business cases for additional funding and delivery and recovery. So it's quite focused, not designed to take up days and days of work or thousands of pages of reporting, but designed to be very focused in what it can assist the organisation to deliver and move. Aside from that, I'm happy to take any further questions on the papers that have been put forward. And we also have worked through with the help of Jane, what that would potentially mean about roles and responsibilities in the remuneration pool, which she's just going to hand around as well. And yeah, so questions, discussion about what is put forward. It's a burn.
Sorry, I should have noted earlier, but just the regulatory hearings panel.
Yep.
Just Councillor Greer. I'm not sure whether you should.
Oh, yes, true. It didn't renew the, yeah. Thank you. I had missed that. Can we just make a note of that, please?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. So that is the removal of Councillor Greer from the regulatory panel. I think we've picked up many eyes, you see. Any other questions? Okay. So we are going to, the plan is for this to roll into, this month we've got council meeting. Beginning of September, we have an extraordinary council meeting around our representation review occurring. And then after that is when we can move into the pattern of the committees coming in. It means that I think there'll be time to do 2 for each of the main committees between now and Christmas. And there'll be 4 for the transport committee as that rolls through. We've also had the opportunity in the scheduling just to look at some of our risk and assurance meetings as well with our newer dependents coming in, just to make sure that we've got availabilities right. So, Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Worship. Just after looking at this, I had a question for councillors to consider on the remuneration, whether we should leave it as it is. And partly is that is in recognition of perhaps 2 of our long-standing councillors not restanding next year. And, you know, we've already changed the remuneration once this trimester, and I've just put it out there that perhaps it's a consideration.
Councillor Annett.
Mine. Oh, that wasn't a question, was a consideration. My question was around how we could, what's the plan to sort of operationalize this moving forward? Is we expected sort of after we've adopted it, I would have approved anything. I totally appreciate that, but sort of how do you expect this to sort of roll out operationally, as far as we've got an agenda preview coming up very soon, but there might be quite a bit of work prior to that agenda preview, just sort of working out what are the priorities and how it all fits together. Have you had any thoughts around that?
Through your worship, yes, lots of thoughts on that one. So look, we were at as a really pertinent part in terms of building the work program, having quite a three-year plan. So the new committee structure is actually really important. So we will talk about it a little bit later today, but now having the committee structures finalised, it'll be working through each of the committees, basically where the priorities, where the key decisions on your work program sit. And if you obviously look inside the terms of reference, there's some quite specific areas of focus and responsibility. So it's now about aligning up our organisational work program, the governance group program, and lay out the program of decision making. So that's the next bit of work we're doing, and the aim is to try and have that substantially underway and complete the next. Well, that work's already been done.
Sorry, can I just, I don't know if it's a question or a statement, and I'll figure that out as it comes out, but my observation with the flat committee structure, and I can see why we're doing this, and I really fully support this to be able to, I guess, take some of the load off of, too many, well, especially you guys. So wonder do you envisage that for each committee that we would also be able to have access to a general manager that will be the person that will oversee that, or will that sort of stuff will get through you? Have you considered that?
Yes, I get through you. So a large part of the discussion has been about enabling things like transport, maybe a more direct line of sight.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the lessons learned from our previous committees is recognising that they are committees of the whole for councillors, they are committees of organisations. So the logic that you would think about strategy, growth and community as an example, that there's not necessarily one GM that's the go-to, which is a little bit like how it was. There's multiple streams in that. So yeah, what you will find though, as we're working through the work program, there will be times when you spend more time with some GMs and some staff than others, depending on the work program. So
Certainly in my intention of how to lead putting this together is that actually we fairly quickly put together quite tight work programs around the where we're going to go, the decisions that need to be done on particular areas. And so, for instance, there's a particular piece of work around our solid waste section 17A and looking at what we do next in the solid waste space. There's some really clear flags of pieces of work that need to be done and put in a work program. It's working really well with the Risk and Assurance Committee that have got to that place of having a really tightly described work program to keep the wheels moving. So I'm hoping that we get to that space. And that's what I'm driving for as well, really quickly. So Taylor?
Just a question about the CE Employment and Performance Committee. There's no quorum with the dropping of membership of that from 4 to 3. There's no quorum listed. Is that the other committees have got the quorum as per standing orders? Is that the same for that committee?
Yes, it would be, which is standing orders that minimum of half. So with 3 members, it have to be 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's just make sure we tidy that up and it's consistent on the 2. Yeah, that's right, Ken.
Just looking at remuneration, and I agree with Councillor Greer, because for the last 6 years, there's been a few of us that have been operating as the same remuneration of everyone else in various roles in risk and assurance and that. And now we're going to change it again, and I actually think that's pretty unfair for the last 6 years, and I think it should stay the same. Even over the good.
Okay, well, that's a fair enough view to put on the table and discuss. The provision that we've got through the Remuneration Authority is for us to decide about what the workload and roles and responsibilities looks like, and gives us the scope to do with it what we think fits the best. So I've put forward a proposition of how I think it could work across the combination of roles that sit in there. We don't technically have to take it up. No, we can decide to divide it however we like. Yeah. So that's a conversation we can.
Well, I'm just to hear it.
Through the mayor. We only have the ability to play with the green. So as you can see, it's just basically at this stage, it's based on a kind of a ratio of what the might have entailed. And the lovely spreadsheet is done by the REMA committee, and the green is actually just some calculations behind the scenes.
Councillor Byrne?
Yeah, I actually support this because and I mean, I don't care what the numbers in the purple actually say, but I know that some of us have sat on more committees than others, and to actually have a very flat remuneration has been, yeah, a little unfair, I believe. Yeah, and I'm not talking about the money thing, but just, yeah, I think some people can be called on than others. And yeah, I think there should be some differentiation between, yeah. roles.
Okay. Cool. So we have got a particular recommendation that talks about the remuneration piece, so we can certainly have that apart into a decision that stands separate. So what if we want- Is there any other questions? Issues, corrections, problems? That's Taylor.
A question through you, your worship, probably to Jay. There's no movement in that to recognise when we are representing council outside of this circle, so i.e. Regional Transport Committee that takes a lot of time and has no, isn't recognised in this system.
So, yeah, no.
I knew that was the answer. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, look, it's, I think, when we talk about roles and responsibilities and workloads, it's always challenging because different people contribute in different ways and they're not always named. The policy here that's got the terms of reference on their standing committees is one thing, but there's a whole lot of other powerhouse of work that happens by this table. So it's not just a reflection of whether you hold a label as a chair or a representative there. There's all sorts of things with people on crematorium committees and CVOS and creative communities and landfill liaison committees, and there's a whole power of other stuff that happens as well. So it's not just about what's in here, but I suppose the structure that reflects a ratio that moves to reflect those more official roles and responsibilities is really a reflection of all of us expecting those people to carry a bit more and to show some leadership in the way that we communicate with the organisation and we drive our decision making forward. A bit more of a public overt handing of those responsibilities and expecting those people to stand up. Right, so there's quite a number of recommendations that sit on this. So the first one is about noting the establishment of new committee structure to drive through to the next 3-year plan. And pursuant to section 41A of the Local Government Act, to have 3 committees of the whole, being strategy, growth and community, finance, infrastructure and performance, and transport. That we appoint Deputy Mayor Kelly as the chair and Councillor Pip as the deputy chair of the strategy, growth and community. That we appoint Councillor Muggeridge as the chair and Councillor Greer and Councillor Jerry as the deputy chair of finance, infrastructure and performance. That we appoint Councillor Kate Taylor as the chair of the transport committee. Without a formal deputation, actually just that in the absence of the chair, that the chair of the Finance, Infrastructure and Performance Committee can step into that role. That we remove the structure that was determined as the Tamatea Partnerships Committee, not because it doesn't have a role in the future, but actually our focus on our Whirinaki roles coming on board in the wider representation mix. It hasn't gained any traction so far and it needs to wait for its right moment in time. That council removes the mayor from the Chief Executive Employment and Performance Committee. Council removes Councillor Minahan from Risk and Assurance Committee. We adopt and delegate decision-making authority as per the terms of reference as outlined in the attachments. Number 9 is the one about remuneration, recognising there could be minor adjustments to councillors' remuneration reflecting changes to workloads, and that we would have to send that to remuneration authority to approve. And that there would be new dates noted for the meetings scheduled. Councillor Taylor.
My choose of the Chief Executive Employment and Performance Committee be in non-so.
It should be, yes. In fact, can we put it to the number 4? The council appoints Councillor Kate as the chair of the Transport Committee and as chair of the Chief Executive Employment Committee. So I'm gonna put them all together, but I do recognise that there is this discussion about the remuneration point. So I'm going to see if someone will move all of them together, but it's possible that we separate and have a separate discussion about the remuneration if you wish.
I'd like to have a separate discussion about the remuneration.
Sure. How does the table feel about that? Should we got the structure and then we'll take that one separately? So let's consider 1 to 8 and 9, and 10. And leave 9 to the side just for the moment. So this is about structure. So 1 to 8 and 10. Can I have a mover in a second, please? Councillor Taylor. And Councillor Annand, would you like to speak to that?
No, yes, I think through you, your worship, it's a good move back to what it's taking the best of what worked well last triennium and reshaping it into the positions we've got now. And I look forward to pushing the transport side of our priorities. Happy to move.
Councillor Annand.
Yeah, fully support the move to the committee structure. Not that I didn't support the last few years, couple of years as well. But I think that with the new season of new long-term plan and also moving from, I guess, into new way of doing things after the cyclone and COVID and things like that, trying to really claw back some ground that we've lost a little bit. I think this is actually going to be a really efficient and effective way to be able to do that. And I certainly hope that it will, I guess, just share the load a little bit more and also be able to just really ensure that the business is given the support that it needs to be successful, especially for the next 12 months, because eyes are on us as we deliver a first year of our long-term plan. Costs going up. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing how it
Anyone else? So I'll put that, moved by Councillor Taylor and seconded by Councillor Annand, numbers 1 to 8 and 10. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Number 9, that council recognises there'll be minor adjustments to councillors' remuneration determination reflecting changes to workloads. To be honest, it probably, if it was to stand, should say as circulated in the table. But I sense that we've potentially got a councillor or two who would like to move to retain the same remuneration structure. I'm putting words in your mouth.
The status quo.
Okay, so you'd like to move that, Councillor Greer? And Councillor Aiken? That council retain status quo of remuneration. Right, would you like to speak, Councillor Greer?
I just, I think we all recognise that this next 12 months is going to be busy. It's going to be very busy, and we are heading, we've got a long way to go in my book, and all of us around this table have got workloads. But I just feel that changing the remuneration halfway through a triennium and with recognising that some of us may not be around this table next year, so I just would like to keep things steady.
Right, Ken, you got something to add?
The reason I'm doing it, and I'll put it out there now, that under this, I actually do get an increase in my remuneration, so I'm actually voting against one. Is that, and I'll use my personal example, for the last 6 years on the district plan, I never got paid any extra, and I was in here every month, if not every 2 weeks. The last 3 or 4 years on the risk and assurance committee, we never got paid anymore. And I was chair for a bit, just acting chair, and then I was deputy chair for a long time. And I think that worked. And I think we all around this table do the same work. Yes, some of us might have a title that we're chair or deputy chair, but we all go out and we do our thing and we all work, and we've all got various other committees, as Councillor Taylor pointed out, when she goes on to the transport committee outside, and I go on to the environmental one in Napier. We don't get paid extra for that, but there's an extra amount of work that we all have to do, and we all do various roles that aren't being recognised by pay. And I think at the end of the day, we all work about the same, so I think the remuneration should just stay equal as in the past.
Other, we've heard, from the members, other reports.
For you, your worship, I'd actually, in the absence of councillor Muggeridge, I'd like to ask councillor Annan what extra time frame that chairing the committees, what the process is. It does it require a lot more time and hence recognition?
Yeah, from my past experience, it does. Yes, as chairing, you have a lot more meetings with general managers. A lot of times sort of working out structures, agenda previews, obviously. Yes, there is quite a bit more time, but then I'm a person that likes flowcharts and goes the extra mile and draws things at stupid hours of the morning and, you know, those sorts of things. So I guess it does come down to the individual as to how much more time and effort you put into things. So, but yeah, in my experience, it was a bit more, quite a bit more work. But that's based on my personality as well.
Any other thoughts? Councillor Witchman.
You know, this, I agree with my fellow councillors around holding it there, standing strong on that, but also, I agree that, you know, roles and responsibilities they should be compensated for it. This will affect me financially, but that's okay, I'm all right with that. I recognise that, with the extra workload that does come with it, yeah, it should be compensated, so. That's my comment. Again, I'm willing to, go with what's on the motion as it stands.
Can I just ask?
Recognising this is a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah.
So welcome to the bravery of the conversation.
Can I just ask a question? Because when I started, back in 2020, I had no idea what you actually got paid as a councillor. Definitely didn't think you, but anyway, I just thought back then that risk and assurance actually did get paid more than a basic councillor, because I was a basic councillor back then. So actually, when we changed the committee structure in the beginning of the last triennium, for instance, you know, Councillor Minor and myself and Councillor Aiken on that, we were actually paid the same as people that didn't sit on risk and assurance. So I just think I recall that, actually there was only maybe 2 or 3 of us that were the minimum.
So maybe I'll add some context in there. So at the time of the last decisions, when the roles and responsibilities, not because we didn't have the formal committee structures, the consideration was actually about the different external appointments, the different internal subcommittees like CBOS and risk and assurance, how that played out across the mix of everyone, so to make sure that everyone had a fairly fair distribution of other parts of the work that they were doing. So those that were on the risk and assurance committee were obviously not doing other things that other councillors were doing the heavy lifting on. So there was an attempt to make the workload even in the absence of those committee structures. My sense is I don't know that worked. And it didn't necessarily reflect those that were putting in the additional work. There was an attempt for it to be even. I don't know that it really panned out exactly like that. Some of that's personalities, some of that is actually the scope of how much work there is to do. So it's almost like it's not a winning. There's no perfect way to do this, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, your worship, given that I would have liked to have had more time to work through this in my own mind, is there a way we can, do we have to approve this today? Is this something that can be done either in public excluded, the bucket doesn't change, the distribution does? Is there a way that we can have this discussion in a not in public forum to work through it or change it or adapt it or whatever, is that possible?
We can leave this, just, we don't need to make the decision. We don't need to change anything. We can take this, come back to another council meeting to make the final decisions. I don't know that it's appropriate for it to be public excluded, is my sense.
Yeah.
But we certainly can take some more time to consider it if that's what we would like to do. And I suppose supporting the motion on the table that we retain the status quo continues that for a period of time. We could prompt it to come back, having thought about it in more detail and had further discussions at a future meeting when there's been more time. We'll definitely do that, councillor Boone.
And I think it is important, as councillor Taylor just said, that we're not discussing, pay rises. The bucket is not changing, which, I think that's important, is that it's just the remuneration pool and how it's divided.
Councillor Moynihan.
Just like the recommendation that councillor Taylor has put forward, I actually support that. I think councillor Boone is quite correct. I think you should be compensated a little bit more. I agree with that. Might add the chair of the liquor license, I do sign off. It takes me about 15 minutes before I read through them and then takes it back every 2.5 days. I don't charge for that. I don't think I should. So yes, like you said, there are people that do extra, that you just keep it quiet. But I just always heard that, like Tim Jones said, councillor Tim, ex-councillor, God bless his soul, but we do it for the community. So what we get, we're very grateful.
Thank you, councillor. The resolution on the table is that council retains status quo for remuneration. We can take that decision how that is. That doesn't mean we can't prompt it to come back for another further decision when people have more time to think about it, but for the time being, that could be that. The other option is that if that is voted down, we could actually just leave it on the table and actually not make a decision either way, to give everyone time to think about it in more detail and actually take a decision at a later date. We can leave that item on the table. So rather than going in the depth of having a debate and a decision on it, maybe some more time, I'd just reflect on what councillor Taylor has just said about taking time. Councillor Greer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and just recognise it is a sensitive subject, it always is when you talk around a table like this, but I'd agree that need a bit more time on this.
Okay. So as the mover and seconder, would you be willing to remove the resolution? I'll put something forward that's a separate one that says that we return to the decision of remuneration at the next council meeting. Instead of taking it today, so you'll withdraw the motion, thank you. And I will replace it with that council returns to the decision of remuneration at the next council meeting. Yeah. Okay, so if I'll move that, if someone, councillor Aitken will second. Through the discussion on that, comfortable? All those in favour, please say aye. Congratulations to those that have got new jobs. The other late item, and thank you, Jane and Doug, for your help in making that all come together. Page 30. Which of the late agenda items, which was the draft funding impact statement for the financial year just ended. And just before we get Mr. Chamberlain up to speak to the paper, I just want to flag, there's a huge amount of detail in this paper, and I do not have the time or appetite to delve into every last detail of it. And we need to keep it at a principled level. The transparency is incredible. And we need to treat that with the respect that it deserves, and thank the staff for that. And we will keep the discussion at a nice high level about the principle of how this is operating. Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain. Thank you for a very detailed report before you even say anything. What's yours?
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, councillors. So the report you have in front of you, as the Mayor has already pointed out, is quite detailed. I don't intend to go through it line by line. What I will say is that the report sort of, in a transparent manner, goes through the council reserves and how they've been used during the year. It also looks at each different activity, how that's performed during the year, those that are in surplus, those that are in deficit, and also takes you through the carry forwards that the staff have requested. It also takes you through what development contributions and trade waste contributions we've collected over the past 3 years, at the past LTP period, and how they've been spent, and basically what we're carrying either as a surplus or deficit to go forward to fund future years' capital program. It also concludes with some information about asset valuations. So every couple of years, we've revalued different classes of asset. This year's a little bit unique in that we're planning to revalue every class. But there's a table there that talks about what the different classes are, when they were last revalued, and what the expected movement is at the moment. The one caveat I will say about this report, and it's both in the executive summary and at the end of the background section, is that officers are still working through the annual accounts and are still doing journals to adjust for various accruals. So while I'm presenting this, it's not a fait accompli. Some of their numbers are still changing, and there is a degree of it's there or thereabouts, but there's still going to be some further adjustments required. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chamberlain, and overall, the funding impact statement that will be going to the auditors for the annual report shows that pretty much the overall performance at the highest level sits in line with what was budgeted for the annual plan for 2024. We're looking at the first page, so we knew some stuff about how tough it was going to be already, and part of the budgets. Questions about? Everyone's thinking carefully about not being too detailed. I can tell. Councillor Moynihan.
Mine's not too detailed, so, and thank you for answering all my emails, so I didn't have to answer. Didn't have to answer 15 questions.
Chocolate fish for preparation.
Just my quick one, it's just about providing for doubtful debts. The calculating provisions for this council doubtful debts, how frequently is this financial monitoring done? I'm just thinking of that because of the downturn in things.
Sure. So again, without getting into the detail, the way that doubtful debts are calculated is quite prescriptive in terms of the accounting regulations. You essentially look back at the prior couple of years, look at where you've had some bad debts, and then take that as a percentage of that debt type. So whether it's rates or whether it's dog registrations or whether it's water revenue, and then you apply that to what is owing at the end of the year. So you're basing your doubtful debt on historical evidence. So yeah, and that's an annual process that we do, but we obviously do recognise bad debts as they occur throughout the year.
Okay. Ms. Leonard?
It's just as my observation that there is money often when it comes to this sort of stuff, we end up taking money from those departments that have been good and prudent with their budgets to be able to fund departments for activities that not necessarily that they haven't been good with the budgets, but there's been an overspend. And often it usually comes from the people facing stuff and the good to have, the nice to have. So I was just wondering, maybe some looking to you, Mr. Tate, what things are in place to be able to ensure that we're not sitting in that predicament this time next year?
Thank you, your worship. So probably I think the biggest difference we had in the current financial year was when we went through that process, having finalised the annual plan of recognising the financial uncertainty that we did have. And then definitely where we actually realised that actually we had some headroom in some activities. The actual ability to speed that up in these last 3 financial months to actually deliver that's a different story. So certainly looking forward, what we have done across the business has certainly lifted our financial performance reporting as well. We've been doing that in the last 18 months. But yeah, look, certainly a lot, the reset of the 3-year plan is going to be particularly helpful in those activities, such as consenting, where obviously we've wound back some of our expectations for the 3-year plan. We've obviously made the changes as well around landfill charges and trade waste as well. So that's certainly the aim as we enter the new 3-year plan, new benchmarks, new baselines to work from. So very hopeful anticipation that we don't see.
Yeah, I think there is a piece though in the resolution that's there about the colloquial language, the kind of wash up around activities that are funded by the general room.
Yeah.
And you know, what's really obvious is that when you look at the economic and social development and the tax and reserves areas, which have got kind of significant surplus sitting there. And so they're going to carry forward in some particular activities, but actually they're contributing to the wash up across everything else. So I think that's a helpful observation. But it's part of how we get the budget to balance, unless we find some other financial mechanism which is creating reserves on some of those other things. We've got to kind of balance the budgets really in the first instance, but well observed. Yeah.
Could I just make a statement of clarity for the public that are listening? One of the things that we definitely do at this council is where we've got a ring fenced rate type. So whether it's specifically collected for water, it never gets used to offset something that is happening elsewhere in the council. So it's only the general rate activities where we can move between different activities. So water is ring fenced, roading is ring fenced. So we don't steal from Peter to pay Paul across different rate types.
That's a really helpful observation because actually there has been an announcement of economic regulation coming into the water space that sounds like it's a big thing to protect ratepayers around where their water rates are going, as if councils have been spending them on glass fronted libraries, and it's really, this council has never done that. And it is already ring fenced. So the regulation is actually catching up to how we've already looked after our rating and how we spend it on the water activities anyway. So that's not a new thing for us, even though it's the economic regulation is going to be introduced as a new thing. We're already doing it. Okay, that's Greer. I'll go first.
So just to be clear, just with my museum hat on, there was money set aside to remove a building, the dairy shed in the building. Is that not showing in the carry forwards? That hasn't been done yet. The funds were set aside for it.
I will need to go back and check how that was funded. So again, just for clarity, a carry forward is where we have collected rate money and we haven't spent it on that project. So the projects listed here are all rate funded projects. There are some capital projects that we haven't done as well, but they were going to be loan funded. So we haven't drawn the loan, so we don't have anything, don't have any revenue to carry forward, and we haven't the expenditure. So in theory, we can still do that activity, but we will be drawing the loan in a later year. So I just need to check the funding of that particular project you're asking about.
Thank you.
That sounds like a later follow-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Annan, did you have something else?
Well, I might go to the later follow-up as well.
Okay, good. Right, that sounds good. The other thing that I just wanted to point out too was just in the resource consenting and building consenting space where and solid waste, where we've known for a little while that the projections are not matching up with the activity, and so they're falling at a deficit, which means that there's that additional step to how to fund that balance these guys are flagging as being, there's going to be some debt funding to deal with some of that activity. We've known about that for a while, but it is quite, there are some big numbers around. The resource consenting one is 490,000 or something like that, but we've known about that. We changed some of our fee structures, remember, on solid waste to try and get ahead of it. An unfortunate collision of economic activity. Okay, so the resolutions, recommendations here for us are that we receive this report on the draft funding impact statement and the proposed carry forwards. We approve the proposed allocations to carry forwards and special funds for the 23-24 financial year. And we approve that the 23-24 activity surpluses in the general rate funded activities be used to fund the deficits in the general rate funded activities as proposed. To be really clear on that. And the next steps on this is actually that the financial statements are with audit or annual report, and that'll come back around through the Risk and Assurance Committee.
So the audit begins at the end of this month. And then there'll be a report making to Risk and Assurance once the auditors have had a look at the books and give some feedback on how we've gone.
Thank you. I'm trying to have a mover and a seconder for those recommendations. Councillor Moynihan and Councillor Byrne. Would you like to say anything, Councillor Moynihan?
Thanks, I think it's all been said.
Anyone else? I just would like to add that we haven't done this little step for a couple of years around the carry forward. It's important for us to understand about where the money flows around particular activities are happening between financial years. But it is also the continuation of our desire to be better connected to where our accounts are going to the auditor. So that they're not just telling us, that actually we've got an understanding of what's going to them before they then have an opinion. And that's been something that we started a few years ago. It's been quite important to us to make sure that we understand our financial position that goes to the auditors. And that's what this, a part of this step is about too, that transparency and accountability of us. Anyone else? Well, I will put the recommendations, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Let's go back to the standard agenda, where we were up to page 42, which is the recovery report, recovery update. Mr. Cooper. How are we doing, Amelia?
Fabulous. I've been enjoying myself.
Koutou katoa, ko te mea tuatahi, tēnei te mi ki a koe, te kanohi hau I Wainganui a tātou, nō reira, nau mai haro mai I raro I ngā parirau aroha o tēnei rohe o te kaunihira, te whānau whānui o tēnei kaunihira. Me leangi tū tēnei, ma tātou katoa ki te mahi tahi, mo te oranga o te iwi katoa, nō reira, e tino harikoa hau ki te kiti ai a koe, I noho ana ki tēnei tēpū. Nō reira, he mihi pīkira wātu ki a koe whai, nau mai, hara mai, whakatau mai. Good morning, everyone. The recovery report. I take the report as read. However, to give a brief overview of the key aspects of the program, I'm going to start at the our Road to Recovery program. We continue to make progress across the Road to Recovery program, across our response and recovery projects. The response projects work completed to date has included addressing over 4,000 minor repairs in simple complex sites across the district. Most of the major projects are now complete or nearing completion. With this, attention has shifted to phase one of the recovery projects to maximise the available recovery budget. We are utilising the current Waka Kotahi emergency response funding to complete the investigation and partial design work on these four sites. In Porongahau, so HBRC have recently received updated stop bank drawings from EDP, the engineering crew working out there. The design is being reviewed to look for areas which need specific attention. For example, where stop banks could be redesigned with narrower crests and steeper slopes to fit within the limited footprint area. So HBRC is still awaiting finalisation on that modelling under different climate change scenarios. So further design refinement will be influenced by the review and obviously the outcomes of that work. And as alluded to in my report, there are significant space restrictions behind the school and near the road, where additional sheet piling is likely to be required beyond HBRC's initial assumptions. So this will be assessed for additional impacts or opportunities on design and cost, etc. Finally, in Parongaho, the draft land acquisition strategy is complete. And this has identified a few complexities, especially around the Urupa area being Māori land and having to go through the Māori land court. In the community and wellbeing and resiliency space, emergency hubs. So to date, hubs have been established at Ashley Clinton, Alsthorpe, Ongaonga, Otane, Parongaho Village, Te Pairahi Beach, Tukakino and Wallingford. A dedicated hub to support people with disabilities is confirmed at the Paul Hunter Centre, Waipukaro. And with continuing conversations with Argyle, Omakere and Takapo about their hubs. Procurement and delivery of hub resources, including hub startup kits, catering packs, generators, play bins, emergency lighting and civil defence supplies are nearly complete. And hubs are now planning their initial training practice setups with Ongaonga, Otane and Te Pairahi all confirmed for this month. And the team were out at Ongaonga last night and we had a great turnout. Work is underway to finalise the startup activation and closing procedures for the hubs and communication strategy to identify how the hubs will communicate to the Council Emergency Operations Centre and the equipment required. We're also working with our comms team on a comms piece in this space to get the word out to communities on what's going on. Finally, stickered properties. The official number of yellow stickered properties are now 23 in the district, down from 46 in the last report. There remains 8 properties in Waipawa and 14 in Parongaho and 1 rural. The pleasing aspect of this is that we now have a clearer picture of where the majority of property owners are at with this process. At this stage, we have 17 properties have started or have plans to start their repair work. 2 properties are ready for reassessment and 4 properties were yet to be confirmed because we've had issues making contact with the property owners. So council officers have carried out at least 1 site visit, door knocks, emails and phone calls. And so a further round of property visits are planned in the coming weeks. Co-leads and I are happy to answer any questions you wish.
Thank you very much. And what I'm just going to do is go back to the kind of the highlight areas, and let's just start with the river management piece. In the project reporting, we talk about those projects that Regional Council are doing, but are there any flags around the other work that Regional Council are doing around consenting and flood protection that we as council need to be aware of? Not around their work program, but the associated pieces for us.
In regards to
The river management and the land categorisation.
I guess this would be an important note to make, and as per my report there, we had penciled in for council or regional council representatives via Dr. Pete and Dolly to be present today to give a report on their the projects that they're leading out on. My understanding is that that's now, well, that was happening on September 5th, but now that may be pushed out as well. Which would be a good opportunity for council to get across those HBRC projects.
Thank you. And just probably on that, just noting that Mr. Muggeridge and myself had a very fruitful meeting on Friday with the CEO of HBRC and Mr. Dolly as well. And we've also now established a framework of regular meetings as well that will also with the chair and Mr. Pete as well as CE or Dr. Pete, I should say, on a number of these inputs. So not just recognising we've got some there's outputs in terms of the Apatuki scheme review as well. So that will obviously have flow-on effects to other impacts for whether it's wastewater computing, how we move forward on some of our wastewater. So certainly looking to work a lot closer together in the short term.
Well, great. So should we just stick to that, the river environmental management topic first? Any questions on that one? Sorry, Kim.
Well, it might be river environmental topics, but the macro dams, and I may have missed it, but you mentioned there's $1 million or something in there. That is regional council, isn't it?
Through your worship, yes.
I was just wondering why it was in the report to show that. It looks like we're paying for that.
I know. Through your worship, all of those projects under river management are led by HBRC and paid for by HBRC.
And there's been quite a lot of communication with the stakeholders around the progress they've made on doing that work. That there's actually been quite good communication on that one.
Just making sure that we're not paying for that.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so that's good. The land transport and drainage management piece, recognising that we've got a workshop a bit later about prioritisation and that the driving of additional business case work is going to happen through the transport committee in the future as well. So we take future decisions. But is there any questions on that recovery program? So Aiken.
Bleachers Crossing. And we're going to discuss that later, but I think it needs to be on the record that this has been now 18 plus months and we have no movement that is seen by our community up there and the frustration levels of building, if not built. And I wonder why we cannot get a movement on that.
So it's covered in quite some detail in the report.
I know it is, but I'm still wanting to know why we still haven't got more movement.
Yeah. So the most recent work has been around discussions with regional council about who can do the work in the river channel. Is there anything to update further than what's in the report?
No, we do an update back out to community next week on that. Council, we've had a really successful meeting with HBRC, the deputy chair of HBRC and key staff with community 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So looking forward to that update. We'll be able to provide a bit more workshop, but looking forward to having a substantial update to community.
I think it just needs to be on the record that, you know, this council is very aware of it and we need to keep pushing hard to get a resolution as fast as possible.
As we are across a large number of sites that are causing
I know,
major
but I'm
disruptions.
just mentioning these guys up there that are having to travel hours to get to their farms. Not the 2-3 minutes that they say, but it's ours.
Absolutely. Any other questions on the roading projects recovery? Chris? It's all that we've hit such a huge completion rate in the pace that we've been asked to deliver. Congratulations to the team that have managed that. Well done. That's huge completion rates, and it was really nice to celebrate some of that with the MPs that came to visit, and actually hoping that Recovery Minister Mark Mitchell will come and see some of our recovery work in the coming few weeks as well. So.
Let's make a note. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of those projects around Barvis Bridge and Macmorrow Bridge have come under budget. Well done.
Three waters. So we've got stormwater and the Waipawa water treatment plant. Questions on those parts of the recovery? Councillor Annand.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it states there that there has been significant progress and that there's been meetings with mana whenua and recent opportunities for regional collaboration have been explored with workshops held recently, including HDC, NCC and HBRC. Just wondering if we could have an update on the outcome of that.
Invite Mr. Swinburne.
It was in regards to our overall stormwater strategy.
Morning. Good morning, councillors. Through your worship. There hasn't been a definitive outcome from the work, those workshops that were held. It was an initial workshop with our regional partners to try and establish some, I guess, collaboration and opportunities for efficiencies where we could share similar key messages and things of the like. Obviously, as the strategy development continues, we will continue to re-engage with those partners and assess whether we can, in fact, make something happen in that space where we can collaborate regionally and gather those efficiencies, but nothing as of yet.
Second question was, just where are we at with the community stormwater groups and plans? I see that there are plans for them. Just wondering, the dates have been decided if we would also be included.
So councillor, did you get the email a week ago with the stormwater update? We'll talk through that the process in there.
Yeah.
So that hopefully that went to everybody that had been connected to those stormwater groups. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I think it did. It was more, and my focus was more, I think it was in this report, might have been weekly words around stormwater focus group meetings with community planning for those in September. Just wondering if we could just, make sure that they're in our calendars, that we can come along and support you so that we are hearing what you're saying when community come to us and talk to us about things on the same page would be really helpful.
We can understand what community is saying.
Yes, yeah, well, we understand what community is saying. We want to make sure that we're marrying it up with what we're saying as well, so that we're all hearing the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and just probably reiterating the question before about we've got new committee structures, how's it going to flow on? So the programming of stormwater is one of the big key priorities for the new finance and infrastructure committee as well. So just noting it's one of its very early pieces of work to have programming. So points noted.
Anyone else on the waters recovery?
I just wanted to double check the table that talks about the hydraulic assessment and Whakaparu. Got the right wording. I'm just wondering, is that something physical that people will see council out there doing something with stormwater, or is that something that's done on a computer and they won't see it happening?
Through your worship, likely that at least the initial stages won't be visible to the public, so it'll be a desktop level assessment using existing information like LiDAR, for example. Following that initial assessment, we'll determine whether we need to do some on-the-ground studies to confirm information or to take survey, for example.
Just wondering through your worship if some comms could be factored into that as well. If you're going out to do something, they go, what are you doing? Answer it before they ask. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, good. Right, and good news on the progress of the Waipawa water treatment plant and looking forward to the next steps on that, so that's great. Community wellbeing and resilience PO, you guys have been really busy on those hubs, that's amazing. Any questions in that space? That's right, Ken.
Under the Southern Gabriel Appeal Trust, who actually distributed, who was set up to look at who got the money? Who were the people?
So that was a trust that was set up by the Department of Internal Affairs.
So it was Internal Affairs.
Yeah, and the trustee on that that came from the Hawke's Bay region was the former Mayor of Napier, Barbara Arnott, who was connected from the Hawke's Bay perspective alongside others. I can't remember who they all were, but for instance, someone from Tairāwhiti was part of it as well.
Because I just looked at some of them and going, well, some of these are not cyclone damage. Some of these are just nice grants and not. So I was just wondering how that worked.
Yeah, so they had fairly wide criteria, and I think from what I've heard, there's been actually some feedback, which is the criteria was really wide, so people put effort into making applications, but then it hasn't been really that clear as to how they've decided priorities. And I would say actually at a local level, we've seen some inequitable outcomes from that, where if you asked me where the need was, they weren't funded, and the ones where there's
Well, I'm
other
glad you
things
said that.
funding. Yeah.
Because I was looking at this going, "Ugh, I'm
And
sorry,
I'm
some of these.
going to give that feedback to the trustee that we.
The other one, just here, we talk about some of these emergency containers and that have been put together. Satellite phones and stuff like that, and that's great. But is there a plan to monitor and make sure that there's someone or somehow making sure that every year they're checked and they're up to date, and they're charged and all that sort of stuff.
There implicitly a question in there that says, is this going to turn up in the annual plan next year with them asking for additional?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Need to look after it. Good question, yeah.
Good track.
Hello, Debbie.
Good morning, through you, your worship. So in terms of the resources being supplied via council and the community hubs that we're supporting, there's an annual audit process wrapped around that, and that's going to be delivered through Pip Dixon as our emergency management advisor. She's currently reaching out to communities like Aramoana who received funding for an EPOD to understand how that will link into the wider piece of resilience work that we're doing. With that exact question in mind, who will be checking the radios, who will be ensuring consumable items are replaced. So there will be one audit process across the communities.
Like I see there's some set phones purchased that I'm going, well, they're not a cheap option and they're not cheap to have connected. So, yeah, who monitors that and making sure where's maybe the better option would have been? Starlink, for example, that would have kept it up.
So that's an issue that, you know, we have a view that the civil defence system has been too far removed from communities and that actually communities should be at the centre. But this seems to be the tension that comes through every 15 to 20 years in New Zealand about this stuff as we go, let's centralise to make it more efficient and then it's too far away, so we devolve back. But so often the challenge is, well, who and how do we resource and make sure that all communities are got an equitable position to start with and that resilience, and then who pays, who looks after it, and how does that work? And I was on a Teams call yesterday with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet who were looking at changes to the civil defence system, and that was one of the key things that came up for them is like, we're going to have community at the centre of this resilience and action work. How does the system support that without getting without creating unnecessary burden?
And who manages it?
And who manages it.
Sure, because let's take an example. The last time we really had a major event was probably Boulder, which was 30-something years ago. And if we've got these containers that sit there for 30 years, are they fit for purpose in the next, like it might be tomorrow it happens, but it could be 30 years away before we have a major event. We want to make sure that they're fit for purpose at the time and not just put away and then forgotten about.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Good feedback. And I think that's pretty clear in the team's mind too. Councillor Byrne.
Through you, just fantastic work on the hubs and brilliant. And just in regards to Waipukaro and Waipawa, and I understand that they're going to be council-led civil defence centres. Just thinking back to Gabriel, and I was in Waipawa at the time, and us having to pull on Te Aute and Mataweka for the mattresses, and somewhere else for something else, and somewhere else. What have we done? I mean, if Cyclone Gabriel was to hit, God forbid, next week, what have we done differently for the communities of Waipukaro and Waipawa to actually say we're ready for another event?
Thank you, through you, your worship. So the civil defence centres, the procurement, all of those resources are underway at the moment. We've been working with particularly Hastings District Council to try and leverage some of that purchasing power. So you may have noticed there's 2 shipping containers have appeared in the car park in the last couple of weeks, and those are going to be the bulk storage for the civil defence centres. So one to supply the municipal theatre here, the other will go to Waipukaro once we've determined, working through different options for sites in Waipukaro at the moment, because depending on the event, we obviously have some facilities within flood zone, some may be earthquake prone, so working through that at the moment. We're looking at for those containers to hold supplies for 300 people. So that will include all of the mattresses, etc. as well. Been reaching out to those partner agencies that supported last time as that backfill until those supplies arrive. Also working through how do we practically store those resources so that they're mobile. Shipping containers aren't necessarily waterproof, and working with Steve at CHB Engineering around some modelling around perhaps portable pods. So not only do we have a bulk store of, for example, 300, but they may be stored in 6 separate pods that could be mobile to support other communities if needed.
The networks around those areas are really live in terms of who do you pick up the phone and talk to, because they're way more alive now than they were before. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, your worship, just a quick comment, more of a comment than a question, that I heard feedback, particularly at Parongaho after the first meeting that they had out there, that they were given a sort of draft date for the next meeting, which came and went with no meeting, no further correspondence, etc. And then now is happening. But I just, it's just a touch point to make sure of the communication that's coming. If it's said in a meeting and informally, they're actually taking some of that on board as if it's going to happen. So just a beware of the communication at those meetings going forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you both. We will have a resolution to adopt the report. Thank you very much. Councillor Aitken's going to move. Like to second the councillor Taylor. Anything further to add?
No, just say it's a very comprehensive report. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Now we go to page 96. We'll go to page 96.
Just noting the recommendations, councillors, when I put this report together about 9 weeks ago now, I omitted one of the actions is to prioritise the remit. So I'm sure you will have all have read the documents in detail. So one of the other additional recommendations for you is to rank them as well. So just noting that.
Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
Just a
Creative way have you come up with, yeah, Alex?
Not terribly creative.
Okay.
Think of a number divided by 12. No, I'm kidding. It's the right page. So I think what we'll do is, generally what we do with these is that we kind of take the basis being that we would support them. And so let's talk about reasons why we wouldn't support them to then go to how we go to any further discussion. So the first remit is about the LGNZ advocate for changes that support the provision of timely and accurate regional and sub-regional population data to councils for use in council representation reviews. Really logical to me, unless someone's got a severe allergic reaction. We're happy to support that one. I don't know how anyone's going to solve it, but I think it is keeping it in front of the Statistics New Zealand and census people that actually those processes are important for us.
Yeah.
But you need, are we to put it in some sort of order, are we?
Well, let's just go one by one first, and then we'll go back and figure out the order of them. Number 2, this is an interesting one actually. That LGNZ advocate to amend the health entitlement cards regulation, so the card holder can use community services card as evidence for purpose of accessing council services that would otherwise rely on a form of needs testing. This is possibly relevant for us on things like retirement flats and possibly if we were to consider, and I know we've considered gold card kind of things around waste, but there is the possibility of considering it in other kinds of services. Yeah, an interesting one actually. Yeah, Councillor Moynihan.
Yeah, the only note that could concern, I didn't bring it out there, so be a fact person. I'll put in here, council services may have different eligibility criteria than those covered by this card. Relying on this card might lead to misunderstandings about what services can be accessed. And I just want to put that out, but I don't know if it will be a problem or not, but you would have to probably really well define what you're going to get.
Pretty much, yeah. And how would you use that? Like, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a particular place we would immediately in Central Hawke's Bay go to using it, but it's an interesting tool that I hadn't really considered that before. Taylor.
Through you, your worship, did we go to something like this for our financial hardship policy? I recall putting means testing to one side and going to some other element of proof that they can't pay, but I just can't.
So the process was about going to a financial to have gone to like a budget advisory service rather than just disclosing all the financial stuff to us.
But
You're
this would
right, that's
enable us to use it instead of that.
Yeah, potentially. Any really large allergic reactions? Okay, we've got a tick. Number 3, that LGNZ lobby central government to ensure that Māori wards and other constituencies are treated the same as all other wards and that they should not be subject to referendum. We oppose the idea that Māori wards should be singled out and forced to suffer a public referendum. The wording of that doesn't quite really line up with what I think is in the supporting information. So interested in thoughts on this one. Councillor Anand.
My question was that I felt that LGNZ was lobbying anyway, but this just basically really puts it into a work plan for the next 3 years or 1 year. Is that how that works? So these remits actually, yeah. So
For the work program.
yeah, I sort of thought that too. I thought, I don't know that we needed to lobby. I thought that LGNZ made them quite clear on that, but yeah, it'll be quite interesting to sort of see where they would want to go with what the work plan would actually be to line up with this, especially with the timeframes that we're all involved in at the moment.
Yeah, that was probably put together prior to the, it was
Yeah.
put together prior to the amendment
Yeah,
legislation.
exactly.
That's the burn.
But Palmerston North are actually looking at how they can challenge the referendum next year. They will go not actually undertake a referendum.
Yeah, but I don't know that's relevant to this though. Like I think the question of this is the piece on this is the particular use of referendum around Māori wards, but also around the FPP and STV. Actually, that's the other one that could be prompted to go to referendum. Any other decisions of representation that council makes around different wards or whatever, if they're refuted, then they go to the local government commission to help sort out what's going to be done with it. So it's just those ones that currently go to a referendum mechanism, and I think that's what they're trying to get is, and that, you're right, has been the basis of LGNZ policy up until now, is regardless of whether you agree with Māori ward representation, actually the fact that that is subject to a referendum compared to everything else is the bit that has been pushed back on quite significantly. Councillor Aitken.
Reading it, I found there was a lot of discrepancies in it all. And I just felt that LGNZ going in here and doing this before the government's now put through their legislation, it's just becoming political. And I feel that LGNZ should be non-political, it should be neutral. And it's starting to show its political bias a wee bit, and I think it needs to be not supportive.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, sitting on the National Council of LGNZ, the tension of how to create a space where local government can be strong in their views on something without being seen as capital P party political. It's actually a really difficult tightrope. And to be fair, I think membership organisations of all colours and stripes across the rural landscape as well have been challenged with how to be that and do that as a challenging space. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through you, your worship, I was just surprised that there was no mention in the background detail there that that it's a race-based decision making. And I was surprised that yes, Māori, but I was surprised that there was no human rights or race discrimination in that process. Yeah, I just wanted to make that comment. I was surprised that wasn't part of the background, so it seems very not thought out.
So it's not actually terribly clear. I think the headline, local government constituencies and wards should not be subject to referendum, like that's kind of the bottom line
Right.
thing for me, is if you just go, well, actually, should councils and communities be able to make decisions around representation sorted out by a process which is not referendum?
Yeah.
But that's the basis of it. And the referendum is a blunt tool being singled out in some issues and not others. So I can.
Yeah, I think the community has spoken that they do want it, and I remember talking to our past CEO, talking to me about anything as significant should go out to the community. And I think this is creating quite a lot of talk and significance, and it should go out to the community. So I feel that by saying not to have referendums and it shouldn't be, and then also saying that they should be enhanced in the next one, that's not democracy. So I don't support either of them.
I look at it and go, so referendum, what's the role of a referendum as a tool? And so if we put our 3-year plan that we've just done out to a referendum, do you think it would have passed? Like it's
But is that not democracy?
well,
But also
yeah,
noting-
but then you go, we exist in a representative democracy system, which is not that we referendumise on everything, because so like in Switzerland, they do that. They're really devolved and everything, the society has got to the point that they decide everything at this micro local level on based on referendum. Whereas we've got a representative democracy system. And if we put everything out to a referendum, we'd never actually come in here.
Somebody has to make a decision.
Yeah. Councillor Boone?
And that's the thing, I mean, we go out to community all the time. And we talk to community and we engage with community. And then we come back and we make the decisions here. So if we're just going to have a referendum all the time, then why are we actually, yeah.
Okay, so as it stands, how it is, so I've heard how we've done this conversation is state if you've got an allergic reaction to one. So we've got an allergic reaction being stated, that's cool. So we need to basically we need to go to do we decide to support or to not? Who else has got an allergic reaction? So we just need to go to a who supports that we support the remit, and I'll just ask for a show of hands to get the sense of where the balance of that sits. So who would support that we support the remit?
Which is that remit 3 or?
Which is remit 3.
Yeah.
Which is the wording. It's not the headline, it's the wording.
Yeah.
Not the best reading, but it's.
No, it's,
Are you supporting?
yeah. I like the headline, not the remit.
Okay, so we also get an opportunity to look at priorities in this as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance that says that we support it. The next one is entrenchment of Māori ward seats for local government. So this is a little bit more particular. Have we got any more about this, what the entrenchment part means, Jane? Does anyone have any more detail about what that means?
I don't.
Okay.
So they become it's almost like they're permanent.
Yeah.
Just through you.
The next government
Councils,
throws
are
them
they?
out.
Yeah, I think that's the point though, what they're trying to get to, councillor, is that if they're chosen to be there, then they should be protected and a super majority would have to be there to get rid of them.
And the supermajority should put them there.
Well, potentially that's one way that some could look at it. Other questions, viewpoints on this one? Actually not a huge amount of detail given in the remit documentation either.
I won't support it.
Not well supported with information in the pack, I have to say. Okay, other thoughts on this one? So we've got statement that we don't like it. Any other thoughts on it? It's difficult to interpret would be my about what it actually means, to be honest. I think the intent, I think I understand the intent, but the mechanisms around what needs to be done with it is not very clear.
Is this also like helping the other remit to just strengthen that basically it's sending the message that government can't just choose to target one system and throw it out to referendum. That's to be able to do that, they would have to get a supermajority.
Yeah, I wonder whether it's actually too late.
Yeah.
Meaning the amendment legislation has already gone
through.
through. I almost think the timing's a bit out of whack because it actually says that constituencies of the 64 councils which currently have these, you know, like have made the decision to have them. It's almost like it's too late.
We'll see what they were trying to do, but yeah.
So you think we've missed the bus?
But in saying all of that, I mean, LGZ is creating positions that are that have longevity. They're not necessarily just about the current government position. Okay, have we got a show of hands for continuing support of Remit 4?
Fine.
I mean, I don't see that there's any harm in it.
Listen.
Interesting, supporting something you don't really understand.
Oh, I do, I understand, I can see what they're trying to do, they don't assume that I don't know, but it's like, yeah, but I don't see a reason to not support it either, because I think that it's very, I could see what they were trying to do. When they put this together.
So we've got a split on this one. I'm going to suggest that maybe we just put a little, leave that one to the side right now, but I'm actually going to contact the North District Council in that team just to get a bit better understanding of what it is that they're proposing, but it's split right now. I couldn't say that we totally support it. I couldn't say that we totally don't support it either. So it just needs to sit there for a minute. Graduated driver's licensing system.
Can I just put something here? I actually don't think it's going far enough.
Is that the right?
Driver's license graduation.
Graduated driver licensing system.
No, I just going through this experience here, I'm going through a couple of my workers trying to get their driver's license and they keep failing. And I'd love to see it that actually they have a process where they can actually get a couple of lessons.
Like we have here,
Is it?
like we have in Central Hawke's Bay.
Yeah, get some lessons in the whole district just before they go for their license to see if they're ready for it. And I think it should be part of the whole process. And I think get these kids and people going for it, it actually should be paid for the taxpayer. You know, they should be able to get a couple of lessons, and I think it needs to be put in there. That, you know, this is a really important part for some of these guys and girls that don't have their licenses, and I know some that are maybe 35, 40 that are still on the learner's license.
So just for the sake of clarity, this kind of direction, it's something the council has supported in a whole variety of ways over years. We've supported it through the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. We've supported it through, in fact, I was the seconder of a remit in 2019 that was actually really similar to this one. And so our history is to support this kind of.
And I'm not saying we don't support it.
Yeah.
I would just like to see a wee bit more put in there around, you know, some actual lessons given to these girls and guys that are struggling to get their driver's license because they just give up. Too hard, but keep driving.
So my sense is that, there's two reasons why I would contact the movers of this remit as well. The first one is that I think there's a powerful connection to the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs that they've potentially missed in this remit. And I think the other thing is that in Central Hawke's Bay, we've got our community driver's licensing programs, which actually is a solution to what they're saying, but it doesn't say it. It's like there's some dots to join. So my sense is that if we support the direction of this, there is a bit of scope for some continuing conversation about how to refine it, to strengthen it and align it, because actually Central Hawke's Bay is a leader in this space.
Can you then at the conference, put that in there and put it as a extra into that remit?
Well, I'd have to talk to the movers of the remit about what they'd be willing to do. So if that's the direction of here, to how do we strengthen it? How do we get it to a better place? Very happy to take that and have those
I'm more than
conversations.
happy to do that. I want to strengthen.
Councillor Anand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've got a bit of a conflict here because this is what I live and breathe during the week. But the thing is that the thing that is frustrating about this is that we actually have a current solution on the table for the issues that many people across New Zealand are experiencing, as far as fee, wait times, not having the ability to get proper lessons and those sorts of things, and that hasn't been, I would love to see us being able to put a solution forward, because I feel like it's a bit of Groundhog Day. We've sort of alluded this to the government in 2019, but now we actually have a proven solution, which is the Community Driver Testing Officer program, which NZTA itself created but is now not supporting. That's the solution that I would love to see councils right across the country actually push through this. And so, yeah, if they were happy to I guess widen this remit and to be open to actually having a solution to put forward, that if put into the hands of the right ministers and the right advocates, then it could actually be quite a powerful thing for the whole of New Zealand, not just us here in Central Hawke's Bay. So
That's helpful, and I think we can certainly put that kind of narrative forward about there is a solution if it can be supported. Okay, so no allergic reactions. We'll
From strengthening.
support it, but there's some other conversations about how we could make it better. Yep. Good. Number 6, proactive lever to mitigate deterioration of unoccupied buildings. This is relatively self-explanatory. It's quite well-written report from Cloud Apathy.
I agree with it, but I think. Yeah, I agree with it, but the ramifications of actually getting people to fix these buildings is that if I was owned a derelict building, and I couldn't fix it, I'd just walk away and give it to the council. So what are the ramifications of the council ending up with all these buildings?
That's a risk now,
I know it's a risk now,
So-
it just creates a bigger risk.
maybe.
It's a risk, I
So-
suppose.
Is that allergic reaction? No, we support it. We can get back down to the prioritising, but no allergic reactions on that one. This next one fascinated me because there's like no substantive anything to it. Apart from the position, which I think is already the position of Local Government New Zealand, which is promote and lobby for the development of a more equitable and appropriate funding model for central government initiatives.
Still put priority to it, though.
Which has been.
With more content.
Yeah, it speaks to existing policy priorities in LGNZ anyway, is my sense. Do we have an allergic reaction to that one?
No.
No. GST revenue sharing with local government. LGNZ be proactive and lobbying central government on sharing GST revenue with local government derived from rates and service fees related to flood protection, mitigation, roading and tree water for investment in these areas. I think there's been a remit like this or thereabouts, just about probably once every 3 years. Okay, so what I've got then, folks, is we're supporting 1, 2, and 3. We are on the fence about 4, but I'm going to go and find some more information and I'll email everyone with a bit more information about that one.
Sorry, 3 and 4.
No, just 4.
No, so we lost them.
Just 4.
Sorry, yep.
Number 5, we support, but there is another further conversations about how we can strengthen it and offer up a solution. And yes to 6, 7, and 8. We need to then think about the importance levels and prioritisation levels. And how do we get to that? So we've got all of them except we'll leave number 4 to the side. And where do we start from? My sense is that the funding models bit is pretty important to us.
The last two.
7 and 8.
Yep.
Um, and I think number 3 and number 4 support some existing action that we've already been involved in too. And number 2, number 1 and number 6 are kind of nice to haves, but they don't really sit high on our list of stuff that we're working on right now.
Oh.
1, 2 and 6.
2 and 6 are the bottom 3.
5. So I said 7 and 8 in the first layer, 5 and 3 in the second layer, and then 2, 1 and 6 probably at the lower end.
Okay.
I think I'm going to put my foot in there on 6. I actually think 6 should go up. I know it's not a real council issue, but it's a major community issue.
It is a council issue. I was kind of
Not
saying,
6, sorry, 5.
yeah, sure.
Sorry?
Licensing.
Licensing should be right up there because I'd hate to think how many people out there.
I had 875. It's got 3.
But
Yeah.
but thanks to what we've got going in Central Hawke's Bay, is it a priority for us?
I think it's actually a priority for New Zealand as a whole. There's a lot of kids out there not even bothering to try and get their license. It costs them getting turned down all the time.
Where do you have that?
Get in.
So I kind of, instead of getting all the numbers from top to bottom, I kind of split it into 3 levels. Where kind of the first one's cab off the ranks in terms of priority of council here, that those funding model ones. At the first
7 and 8.
the first tier. In the middle tier, which are also important and back up existing need and also interest of our community, is around number 5 and number 3. And that number 1, number 2 and number 6 we support, but they're not active things that they're not active championing the issues for us in the community right now. So that gives us a basis to start from is at least an order with some groupings.
I agree with those grouping.
And 4, you'll come back to us with more.
Or I'm going to come back to with some more information about where that's at. I would feel about that. Good. Okay, great. Thank you. So we will report those. So the myself and Councillor Taylor are going to the AGM and are registered as the voting members. So we ask that you attend us with your delegation to do that. And we will, in this resolution here, we will pull out number 4, but note that I'm going to find out some more information and come back. And I'm also going to do some more on number 5. Thank you, Councillor Annan. Councillor Whitman. All those in favour say aye. It's interesting in the what you said, Councillor Aiken, about the kind of the party political fence around the advocacy, and the National Council has been talking about that a little bit just in the last couple of weeks, because things have been pretty live in terms of dialogue between the minister and the sector. And an interesting conversation that was 3 years ago, LGNZ was criticised as being too close to the government, and so have tried to, I think, have a position which is more strong about where there's a difference of opinion, and the consequences that it's coming across as being party political, but actually I think the intent is that it's not, but in a compensating for having been criticised of being too politically aligned before, have kind of gone too far, and then it looks more political too. So it's fascinating.
It's not an easy act.
It is not an easy balancing act. Right. Page 150. Documents under common seal. This is pretty bog standard.
Happy to move.
Moved Councillor Hammond, seconded Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Carried. Thank you. District licensing. You'll tell me what perspective it's or. Harrison.
Afternoon, your worship. Yeah, so, if you know the purpose of why we bring it every year, it's a legislative requirement, so I'll take the report as noted, but did want to hand over to the DLC chair to say a few words as he wished to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Moynihan,
Well, I will say.
it's your annual moment.
Boring. I'd just like to say, firstly, on behalf of myself and Deputy Chair Councillor Witchman, needs comment after this as well. I'd like to say a big thank you to Mrs. Harrison, Customer Relations and Experience Manager. Our two licensing inspectors, Natasha and Kate, and also our Administrative District Licensing Officer, Gemma, for your support and the seamless way you handle our licensing processes. Your hard work in navigating the complexities of licensing, especially with the new government changes to the sale and alcohol supply of alcohol amendment bill introduced 7th of December 2022, which is now in force, which will then give the community a lot more say, but there are other things. We signed off a total of 144 district licensing applications this past financial year, increase of 6 from previous year. Signing off on average 1 application every 2.5 days. Once again, thank you all for always being available to address our concerns and queries.
Excellent. Well, and thank you to you and to Councillor Witchman for the work that you do, but particularly you in carrying awesome. I did have my one question was actually about whether we can pick up the fact that the LAP is due for review in September 2024, which is like in 2 weeks' time. Have we got a process for that? And can we please pop that into the very near work program, strategy growth and community builds?
Through your worship, it's due in November. I was a little bit eager. So yeah, there will be a process coming back. Yeah, so I was a little bit eager and thinking that we're starting that process in September and we'll work through that and come back to the table and provide you an update. So that's slight error. It is due in November.
Okay, strategy growth and committee.
Yes.
And community.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Bishop.
Councillor Byrne.
Just a quick question. I was just wondering if there is a risk to us by not completing the CPOs or controlled purchase operations. And I understand that it's our partner agencies that are causing us not to be able to complete those, but is there a risk to us from not having them being conducted?
Through your worship, we are working really hard with our other agencies to get something on board this year. In lieu of that, though, we have been completing some irregular compliance checks on some of our licensing licensed premises. Through the last CPO that we had, we were really successful in that we didn't have any that didn't breach, which is fantastic, but mindful that we do need to continue that. So through our alcohol licensing inspector, Natasha Kraitiana, we're working through to get something hopefully this side of Christmas, but I can't confirm that. In the meantime, we'll continue with the compliance checks. And if something is raised from that, we directly go to our partner agencies to follow up as well, which we have actually done the last 12 months with one particular license. So it's happening. It's just not happening combined as we would like to with our other partners being the police and water.
So if something is found during a compliance check, it can still be responsible and action can be taken.
Through your worship, yes, what we generally do is we follow up with our partner agencies straight away. There's certain process that we go through depending on the level of breach. But we certainly do follow up our process. Yeah, and it's noted on their records. Yeah.
Yeah, have we changed processes or strategies or staffing or district plan provisions that are now flagging historic licenses as non-compliant?
Through your worship, yes, with the changes in the district plan. It has meant that some licenses, as they come up for renew, we're having to relook at the license provisions and what needs to be done to meet those. So there has been some things that we didn't realise through the district plan would have an impact on this particular activity. We are trying to take an approach where we can still allow those licenses where possible within the constraints, but we have come across a couple which we have been working through and are still working through to try and find a solution that works that's within the legislation.
And supplementary through you, your worship, is there a district plan change that would be possible, or can we look at that so that it's not repeated? Is that the way to go?
Through your worship, we have been talking with the district plan team about what are the things that we could be doing, but I think there's a bit of feedback around the interpretation of those parts of the district plan. So we haven't got a proposal to make any change to the district plan at this stage. We're just working through internally on what we can do to avoid that, essentially, if we can understand those restrictions. So it's something that's interesting because we didn't realise that until we started to renew licenses, and with the change of staffing and the operationalisation of parts of the plan, where we've now come across this. So we're just working through to try and address it as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Good. Anyone else?
Just quickly to add to councillor Burns' comment, I'd just like to note that there are 2 police liquor licensing inspectors that go and do these CPOs, correct? And that is from here to Wairoa, 2 in the Hollow Hawke's Bay. So that's why there could be difficult, and we've heard that they do actually, if we are trying to get them to do this operation, that they are actually put on other jobs. It's not committed, so that's where our problem is.
Good, that's interesting. Text. Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. We will have councillor Boone, would you like to move that we note the paper? No problem. Seconder, please. Taylor. And further, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried, and dog animal control.
Oh, afternoon, Mayor Alex, elected members. I'm happy to hand over to councillor Monahan too, if that's an option.
You bet.
Same as Ms. Harrison, regular report, no outstanding trends. Pretty consistent with the growth projections that we've seen through the last sort of 3 years with the report and history of this report. The only slight additive is the inclusion of our whānau, the Ruahine Animal Rescue, that now are working and operating out of the pound and supporting us in that capacity.
Thank you. Questions?
How is that relationship benefiting you?
Through your worship, so it's mutually beneficial. They need a site to operate from. We're working through doing the license to occupy to give them some rigour around stability for their rescue, but also it helps us with the welfare aspect that isn't our statutory obligation. That would usually channel through SPCA, and while they still have a presence, they're not fulfilling the scope of the need that we've seen here in CHB, given the current economic climate and the surrendering of dogs and things like that that we wouldn't usually pick up, but the Ruahine Animal Rescue have picked up that slack. So good to have them a part of that. A part of the whole conversation, and they still work quite closely with SPCA and supported very well by them. So.
We heard through the 3-year plan about bringing services back in-house and potential savings that our community were wanting from, bringing things in-house. And I see through here that we've stopped using after hours from an external contractor. And I'm just wondering, how much was that costing us and are we currently saving money by doing it ourselves?
Oh, that's quite a detailed question, councillor Byrne. That I've tried to avoid all day and we've got past 12 and
Okay.
gone there. Great question, but let's get the details circulated after the meeting. Thanks.
Oh.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, through you, your worship, mine's more of a sense of what you think is out there, like the dog-related complaints is growing on page 164, but then the number of infringement notices issued is halved in that period, and yet the dog-related complaints are going up. I'm just wondering, what's your sense check? Are we getting worse or are we getting better? Or is the community dog owners getting worse?
Through you, your worship. I mean, there's a sense of exhaustion, I think, from the community, which we can appreciate given the current times and climate and everything we've been through in the last sort of 3 years. But what we've learned from the council, Mark, is that we need to live and breathe policies that we have in place for compliance. And so that's what we're trying to do as a team and use the engagement and education method as opposed to the legislative lever that we do have, but we're definitely prioritising that engagement piece and trying to educate our community around helpful tips that they can to reduce the noise and reduce the complaints and getting our team out there to make sure that we're seen to be doing those things. So it's a combination of things. Yes, the complaints are slightly up because people tolerance is slightly lower, and then the team's being proactive with the management of that and the engagement of that.
Again. Councillor Grey is going to move that we make.
Can I just add that it's a great report and just on registered dogs, where a third of our population has a dog.
Yeah. All six, yeah. I have a second to note the report, please. Councillor Moynihan.
Please.
All those in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. Guys. We've got 2 lots of minutes, one which is not being tabled, which is the unconfirmed minutes from the Chief Executive Committee meeting of 12th of June. They will come to the next meeting, but we have got them from December. And we've also got from the Risk and Assurance meeting from the 20th of June to be received. I'm actually going to ask for them, I have a mover and seconder for both of them.
There's no one that's on them.
Councillor Moynihan, thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll do.
It's just receiving, it doesn't, there's no
True and accurate.
Councillor Moynihan and Councillor Witchman. That's receiving both the minutes from the 19th of December Chief Executive Committee and the 20th of June Risk and Assurance Committee. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Was there any questions on the stuff, the material that had come through from the Risk and Assurance Committee and that anyone would like to ask a question about?
It's a really generic. Councils are allowed to.
Say that again.
Are councils allowed to offset their lendings?
Elaborate.
Or just, like if you've got money in the bank, are you allowed to use it to offset the lending?
So that's the treasury function.
Yeah, I know, I was just reading, I was just in the little bit in the treasury management monitoring report, we're about to draw down more debts and things like that, just wondering about in this, are you allowed to do that? We do that, don't
We
we?
already are.
We already do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the additional debt is is needed on top of that. Yeah.
Pretty much best.
Yeah.
It used to be the other way around. So the amount of lending externally was small compared to what was lent internally because of how that treasury function worked, but now we've got a lot more external stuff. Right, we were on the wall, Brent's nodding. Oh.
Got it right. Not even.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I was trying to get my head around it because like it's done on a monthly basis. And so in the 1 month, you might have more money in the bank because you're waiting to pay out suppliers and and that sort of stuff. And so how do you actually even forecast what costs are going to be, especially with the ever-changing interest rates that we're facing at the moment? So like, I guess where I'm heading is, have we got to a point where we might actually be able to save some money in our lending, in our potential lending budget that we put into the 3-year plan? Yeah,
As in to not take on as much debt as what was
Yeah.
forecast in the budget.
and finance costs as well. I mean, because that was the biggest driver of the cost, was the fact that the cost to borrow. And so now with the cost to borrow going down, interest rates will go down. So the government keeps telling us, or have.
Most of our
already.
borrowing is fixed.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So
It's
great
fixed
question.
past 3 years.
Great questions, and maybe you could come to the Risk and Insurance Committee and learn a bit more about it. But there are some things that we're doing around interest rate swaps and things like that, which are part of what we can do. We've also got the option on the table around the credit rating through the LGFA, which would also allow us to bring down borrowing costs too when we choose to go there. So there are some of those things that are definitely in that mix. But I think at a higher level, your point about the debt, if we debt needs to be paid and there's financing costs towards it. And what we saw going into the last budget was that the budget is created with, there's a whole lot of finance costs that is because of money that's been spent in the past. You're not forecasting what you're going to spend it on and then paying it in to make sure we're not surprised by it. So looking at the amount of debt we take on this year for the work we've got to do, what that means for rates next year.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good service, the debt, I mean.
So some of our drivers of rates increases that we have to be conscious of are not they're retrospective rather than looking forward. So sometimes we act and then face the consequences later.
Yeah.
So take that to the finance committee meeting and talk about that. Good, right, thank you. Page 183. The Q4 organisation report. Again, I am just going to note before we open this, again, a really detailed report. It talks in a lot of detail about organisation, what the organisation's up to and across our priority areas with a really coherent narrative. It's really big, and actually just to note that as the last one in the cycle of a whole 3-year LTP, it's kind of like a bit of a milestone moment in the storytelling, and some of the measures are interesting to say the least. But again, we won't go too nitty-gritty on the details. If we've got really detailed stuff, we can talk about that separately. But Mr. Tate, would you like to present your paper?
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Your Worship. And well, aligned the points you raised are the points that I was going to speak to.
Yes.
So good to know we've got that in common. So look, just really wanted to note again the adoption of 3-year plan, and as we close what was the previous facing the facts, as we still face plenty of facts moving forward, but noting now that we are well and truly on a road to recovery. So just really noting both the organisational effort that's gone into that, but particularly noting the weight that you have all carried as elected members, particularly that earlier this year, the cycles of what were weekly workshops and weekly meetings with quite large amounts of information and some pretty challenging discussion and choices to make. So again, really looking forward to having that work plan in place now, what that translates to. We've heard earlier today on land transport recovery projects, and again, just noting the recognition of Ms. England in the report as well. Again, just her national recognition as an emerging leader. In we can focus on lots of the outputs, but we look across the board, and growing great people is again one of our big focuses, and again a great outcome to see being recognised nationally. Talk a lot about roads, but local water done well. It's actually really great to be able to note in this quarter that we've made some solid progress in terms of having the terms of reference assigned for that, and in particular about now a really clear work program as we're moving towards the aim of actually being able to consult with community, hopefully, I want to say end of this year, but probably early next year, in terms of the options for local water done well, but as we work through work programs for committees, noting that that will be a particular focus for us as we work through. And last but not least, you used the word interesting, Your Worship, on the resident satisfaction survey. Just probably noting that the pool we have had for this year is slightly smaller, but what we are seeing in the results that we've received for this are similar to the results that every other council across New Zealand are seeing, where the trends are either dropping or, to be fair, you actually can't pick a trend. There is no real logic to some of the trend. But that's not to say that the underlying feedback that we've received isn't valued and isn't important. That will certainly be reflecting on that. Certainly, as we look forward to what is the new 3-year plan, again, a lot of those measures have been replaced by, rather than this resident satisfaction at large, they are focused back to the specific activities. And if I was to use activities like resource consenting and building consents, as an example, they are tracking currently in the mid-90s for the stats and the data that we've had back to date. So again, just sort of shows some of the misalignment in terms of this kind of at-large surveying that we're doing. So other than that, just again want to acknowledge the efforts of ELT, the wider efforts of the organisation, again, your efforts in terms of getting some pretty significant decisions over the line as well to support us in delivery. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I just picking up on the organisation priorities, I think we've got an opportunity to think about how we use the green box pages, which are the first few pages, to be really clear about how we get the committees operating, and some of the other connections, like for instance, the page 203. On the regional water assessment, where we talk about working with HBRC on the rollout of the regional water assessment, scarily aligns with actually what Clint tabled this morning, yes, and possibly helps the thinking around what are some of the other actions we could take in that space around engaging in economic development viewpoint as well as an environmental viewpoint. I thought that was really helpful. Any questions about any of our areas? I thought that the red boxes on the community satisfaction surveys that showed, ended up being red boxes with numbers. Actually, when I looked through it and looked at what they were measuring, I know that they look scary, but actually they're not necessarily that disconnected, I think, from where public has been talking about. We ask, the percentage of people consider that council has responded well to community needs. And at the time that we put the survey out, there was huge unease about rates going up, about transfer stations being closed, about being potholes everywhere. And we, these are issues we know about. They were always going to be unhappy with us about those things. So it's not necessarily completely random. No. So yeah, Councillor Byrne.
Try not to be too specific, but to me, people complete surveys a lot of the time when they're unhappy about something, like you say, we're closing transfer stations and those sorts of things. But do we actually delve into the people that take the time to write the comments? Are those saved somewhere out?
So usually there's a string of RFSs that get created following people submitting down to the pothole and the corner of the space.
Correct. Go to Councillor Annand.
This report, does it go to Risk and Assurance Committee and then does it also audited? This report says my query is that with having so many red boxes, we have to acknowledge that it's been a tough year and we haven't met our set targets and we chose them. Let's face it, we chose them. And so yeah, just wondering, have we put the organisation at risk as far as anything by actually aiming so high and not delivering?
Through you, so not at risk as such. The non-performance measures are audited by ENU, so they'll be going through and assessing the data. They won't do everything; they'll pick some, and they'll assess the data that sits behind those to give confidence in terms of year-end audit. But probably being really clear, it's about the level of service and performance measure you meet. Ultimately, that's the contract you have with the community about what we're supposed to be trying to achieve or what we're supposed to be aspiring to. Sometimes where that misalignment actually fits is around how we either deliver that or the funding bits. So I know that certainly the work that we've done in this last 3-year plan as of the last 6 months has been about trying to make sure we've got that bridge. So levels of service are one of those things. Measurement's never perfect. And what you measure and how you measure it and when you measure it will always impact those things. So one of the measures that we use in terms of satisfaction and just general feedback.
So Councillor Annand, at our last risk and assurance committee meeting where our 2 independents took their space, we had a really great committee meeting. We talked about compliance and we talked about the other reporting that comes to council, that how do we make sure that they are getting that and seeing that narrative. So this org report is a classic one that should probably go to them directly, that we had it because it comes across compliance activities as well. And ultimately will come down to how we assess these things against our risk appetite, and whether we take any actions based on whether we're actually comfortable with the fact that we knew about it, or our appetite is that we're happy to sustain some of those things. Some of our regulatory compliance things where we know, like in our wastewater space, we know that we've got some challenges and we're choosing to act in certain ways. Okay. I have a request that into a further action around the operator for the Waipawa deciding to not be here, that we prompt a conversation about what we're trying to achieve with the facility so that we can talk about what the operating model, what are the things we would need to achieve when I think about community activation, which sits in our here, just to make sure that we've looked at a conversation with councillors about what's being considered in that space.
And I wouldn't mind just getting a little bit of a heads up, as it was my media release that said that we had saved some money in Harker Street in the reinstatement there. Just wondering if we could have a bit of a detail as to how much we saved, and yeah, that'd be good, because I mean it is better off funding, and so that's the exciting thing, is that would be repurposed to go into something more better off.
Right, any other questions on the organisation report? Amazing report, amazing things going on. Have a look on a seconder that the fourth quarter organisation report for 1 April to 30 June 2024 be noted. Councillor Annand. Councillor Byrne, one last to speak.
I would like to, as the mover, I mean, we read these reports and they're amazing. You know, I just think, you know, hats off to you all, that to us all actually, that we've been able to get to this part of the year. It's not been an easy year, we have to admit that, but we've still been able to get some really cool things underway, and Harker Street was opening was a real highlight for us. I mean, we're always looking for the things that we can actually do to really bless our community, and that was one occasion that I think well done. It was something that we could do that was requested, and so thank you for that. I'm just really encouraged by that I've talked about that a bit today, that we're really trying to claw back ground, and we really are. And I think I think that's what I love about this organisation, is that we continue to keep moving forward. So as long as you're moving forward, you are making ground. So and I think every time I read this, I think, we're still getting there, which is a really exciting place to be. So well done to everybody. Well done to you, Mr. Tate, for this final report for that year, and look forward to seeing the next report, which is the first report of the new year, which will reflect a real favour, I think, for you and the tone that you've started to set, which is quite exciting to see.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else?
I just wanted to reiterate what Annand said. I was actually pleased to see, and I am taking a deep dive at the moment, into the green boxes for the retirement housing, because we don't normally get a great response from our retirees. And I know for one, I am not getting the phone calls that I was getting prior, to the team, actually, addressing some of the issues that they've been having for some time. So I think that is a major win, and, it's not all bad news, and I think it has been a rather difficult, 18 months. And we know it's not going to get easier in the short term, but I think we're heading in the right direction. So thank you very much.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Now. That's all right. Can I just check? Support a resolution for next meeting being the 19th of September, but actually we're having extraordinary on the 5th. Yes. So let's say the 5th. So at page 200 and something, 251 will be the one. The next meeting of council is actually going to be the extraordinary meeting on the 5th of September, where we're going to have hearings and deliberation on the representation review. So that needs to say 5th of September. I have a mover and seconder for that, please, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Bria. For those in favour, please say aye. And against, carried. The final items left for today are we have got for public excluded. So we've got a key project status report on our district plan, which is currently still in its legal resolutions. So we have to do that public excluded, and we have minutes from committees that have been public excluded as well, which we need to do in that forum. Actually, it's not a lot to do. It's fairly administrative. But I do need a resolution to exclude the public to ensure that we deal with those matters appropriately. The mover and seconder to do that, please. Bria. Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried, and so that's the time that we will be closing off our live stream. But thank you everyone who has participated today, and would encourage you. Actually, a lot of what councillors talked about today was, and there is actually a lot of incredible detail about what council is doing that's available on our website and our meeting agendas, which we've got in front of us, but you don't necessarily have in front of you. So I encourage you to go and have a look. There's a lot of great stuff there. And our next meeting will be on the 5th of September.